Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. Thank you so much for being here today. Today's webcast is brought to you by Juniper Open Learning, and our session is entitled Building a Juniper EVE-NG Lab-Environment for Daily Usage. My name is Christine Carcalius, and I am a program manager based out of our headquarters in Sunnyvale, California. I manage the Open Learning program, which consists of the free courses and free resources that are available to you through the Learning Portal. And I will really just do a quick introduction so that we can get our demo started right away, but I'll be chiming in during the session whenever we have a few minutes. So today's session is part 3 of this series. In last week's session, Christian covered the templates available for EVE-NG. He showed you how the templates work and how the values can be changed. And then Christian also explained how to obtain the images and how to install them. In today's session, Christian will cover how to create and use custom templates, how to contribute to the project, and also cover some more advanced labs that utilize fairly huge resources. So I am recording this webinar, and I'll send the recording link to everyone that has registered for the session. What I've done last time is include also part 1. So when I send this out, I'll have all 3 recordings there in case you've missed any of them, or in case you want to replay some of the content from the previous sessions. So since we are on webinar mode, just make sure you're not shy, ask your questions. In between Christian, myself, and Oldest from EVE-NG, we'll make sure to address any questions that you might have. And that said, I'd like to welcome back our presenter, Christian Scholz. Thank you for being with us today, Christian. We had such a great turnout the first 2 sessions, so I'm very happy to see the same audience today. So without further ado, let me turn it over to you so that we can dive right into today's topic.
Thank you so much, Christine. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining again. This is part 3 of our session. I will quickly go through what we did so far. Let me share my screen. So yeah, just like Christine mentioned, in the first 2 sessions, we started with a blank server. We installed EVE-NG. So we simply took the ISO file, created a bootable USB, and installed it in, I would say, not including the waiting time, in under 5 minutes. So we basically saw how easy it is to install EVE-NG on a bare metal server. And then we changed the initial password and run the install wizard so that our server was prepared. In the last session, as mentioned, we fetched the images, we've uploaded them. I showed you the EVE-NG's commit system. We customized some icons and values in the default template. And the current status, we still have our EVE-NG Pro server with the Juniper images. So the VSRX, the VMX, and the BQFX. And our goal today is cover the clustering feature and the load sharing, how to design that, what to look out for. We will also look at mixed environments. So if you're using the cluster to combine bare, VM, and cloud, we will cover some of the pro features for troubleshooting. I will show you the link loss and the latency as an example. And then we will create a custom template. So I will show you how you could create a template that is not on the EVE-NG's template list yet, just either to temper around with, or if there is a new image coming out and you want to try it out, you can create your own custom template for it. And finally, we will look at huge labs, how to deal with them, some of the tips for running these larger labs. So as already mentioned in the last session, clustering basically allows for scaling. So clustering is the idea of having one of your EVE servers, usually the most performant one, as a master node. That is also the licensed one. Like I mentioned in the last session, you just need to license your master, so your pro master, and all the satellites that you will install later. There's also a slide coming soon about that. They will join your cluster, and then you can start labbing, and you don't need to to look out for any licensing because you've already licensed your master. This allows you to share the load and also to mix different type of servers that you might have. For example, maybe your bare metal server has a lot of CPU cores, and your VM server has a lot of disk space, and some of the other cloud services that you're purchasing has a lot of RAM. So in case you're running some security stuff that is done in memory, maybe that is something you want to fetch from the cloud. So with the clustering setup, it doesn't matter if you run bare VM or cloud. You can mix and match to make basically your dream EVE setup come true. Like I also mentioned in the last video, your real enemies are the CPU cores and the hard disk speed. So if you're choosing a server, especially for the clustering, make sure that you have enough CPU cores and that your disks are at best SSDs or NVMEs. But you want really fast drives to really benefit from what EVE brings to you. And as mentioned here, let's say you run a lab with the BQFX space and the JSA, then you already know, okay, the BQFX is very hungry for CPUs. It loves getting CPUs and CPU cores. Juno Space, for example, I mean, we all know it's hungry for everything. It's Juno Space. So yeah, can't be satisfied, right? And the JSA will do a lot of logging, so it might be very, very hungry for disks. But that also depends on the type, maybe on the version that you use or on the type of image that you use. So if you look at the documentation, depending on the type of appliance that you want to run, the V device type that you want to run, you need to look out for the either CPU or hard disks or memory requirements and make sure to stick with them. And based on that, you can choose what server to use, if you can choose freely. Of course, if you say, I got 3 servers off of eBay, then you, of course, can create a cluster with that, but still keep in mind that the most performant one should be the master, and all the others should be the satellites. And the great thing is, if you need more resources, just add more satellites. That's the cool part. What do you need in order to run an EVE cluster? Well, first of all, you need a valid Pro license because clustering is Pro only. And of course, you need some communication between your master node and the satellite nodes. And this is listed here. This is also written in the official EVE cookbook. So if you look at the cookbook, it also mentions this is just a screenshot that I took. And that is everything that the master and the satellite needs. Usually, if you're running that in your lab, you have a direct access with no firewall in between. But in case you do have a firewall in between, you need to make sure to open the ports listed here. So how to install it? Like I said in the first session, I showed you how to install EVE. It was very easy, and that was the community edition, so this was not visible. If you are having the Pro ISO file, you will see an option to install the EVE agent. So the agent is basically a satellite. And like I mentioned before, always make sure to use the ISO files from EVE-NG.net. There are some counterfeits on the web. I would strongly recommend you not to use them. Go to the official website and use this ISO. This has been tested. It runs stable. This is the one that you want. And then simply select Install EVE Agent. Let it run. There is also a section in the EVE cookbook covering this with nice pictures. So make sure to follow every step. And as long as you stick to this how-to, nothing can go wrong. And like you saw last time, installing that is really, really easy. So basically, it's just installing a Ubuntu, and on top of that, it's not installing the EVE Pro, but a satellite software. And then later, I will show you that in the Pro, you can say, okay, this is the IP of my satellite. Please add this to my cluster. So like I said, if you're in that's the cluster management. I will also soon jump in my EVE so we can see this live. You can basically see in the background that I have one master running that I currently use in this lab. And then once you say add member, you can give your member a name like satellite CPU, satellite hard disk, or whatever fits your needs. You can input your IP address, currently IPv4, and your member's root password, so your satellite's root password, and then the master node will connect to your satellite, integrate it, and build the Wireshark tunnels that I've mentioned last time to run the communication. And yeah, then it will also be listed. So you, as usual, you access your EVE Pro and you will see all the satellites listed. And as soon as you start to add a node that is seen on the bottom here, you won't only see a master, but also the member that you have just added. So basically you can decide now, okay, where to add these nodes. And you also don't need to upload all the images to your satellite. That is what your EVE will do for you. So you simply, as long as your master node has it, and you can add them to the topology, for the first time when it tries to run this on the satellite, and the satellite would not have the appropriate image, it would fetch it from the master and then basically start. So that's very, very easy in my opinion. So you don't have to think about where to put all your images, simply upload them to your EVE. You're managing it still as it would be your standalone Pro EVE, but you have some more resources in the background, and that makes it very, very flexible and very, very powerful. Yeah, and some folks reached out to me. There were some different slides going back and forth, and I wanted to show this one more time. Basically, that's what we also discussed in the last two sessions. When it comes to performance, the best thing you can do is install EVE on a bare metal server. That is without a doubt the most performant one. Because if you think about it, if you install it on a VM on ESX, you already have one of the tier layers from the hypervisor in between, right? So on the bare metal server, your hypervisor, your Ubuntu, has direct access to the hardware. It runs QEMU on top, or KVM, it depends what type of image you use, and that has direct access to the hardware. So that's the quickest way from your virtual device to your hardware. So when you're looking at the slide, of course, it's the most performant one. Then if you have a powerful ESX cluster, for example, and you install your EVE on an ESX server, it will still be performant, but not as performant as a bare metal server with the same specs. So if you're going from a VM to bare metal, you will always see a performance increase, always. And one of the worst things you can do, I call it the EVEception. That is basically when you start to run things on your workstation, which you can do to show that EVE is working. But then again, the performance will be not that good. And especially if you run images like the BQFX, that is something that you really don't want, because these things are really, really resource intensive and very, very resource hungry. And of course, there's the option to fetch everything from the cloud. So in the cloud, maybe if you have the Google platform, you don't know what type of hypervisor they run, or you don't know what shenanigans they do inside of their server network. You can get a lot of benefit from that. So usually these cloud servers, if you configure them correctly, they have a lot of performance, but still it could be a cloud bare metal server. So you're basically consuming bare metal. That depends on the type of package that you use and the type of server that you select. And usually that can get quite expensive. That can give you a huge performance boost, but beware, it can be quite expensive. So, and the good part is, as I mentioned before, the EVE hybrid, so you can run multiple flavors in your EVE cluster. So like I said, maybe your master node has some huge SSDs, so everything is blazingly fast. Okay, then you want to choose this as your master. Maybe you have one satellite standing at your co-location with a lot of disk space for those disk-hungry devices. So you can add a satellite, maybe call it the huge disk satellite. Next thing is you need more CPU power that can easily be consumed from the cloud, right? So that is maybe your CPU satellite that you can add. And maybe you have some that you want to use for management or something to just view and just see that it works. You could theoretically also add your laptop. I've done this once. Like I said, it depends on the image that you put on it and the power of your laptop, but usually using your laptop for EVE-NG is not the best choice in terms of performance, especially if you're running Juniper images, because they need some resources for themselves. and you will easily run into the memory limit on your laptop. And even if that's not an issue, you will still see a lot of hideous performance because yeah, it's not made for that type of load. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're running out of options and yeah, everything is basically full, you start to throw more servers in. That's the cool part. Your cluster can grow, and you can also say, okay, now I'm removing the cloud. I have a new cloud package. Remove the satellite, add a new one, and then you can yeah start to create your dream lab, because obviously there is some scaling limitations involved. I will cover that later, but yeah, in theory you could add a huge amount of satellites without seeing any disadvantages. And like I said, it makes sense depending on the type of load that you have. For example, we will now look at some of the Abstra or JATP stuff, that it makes sense to select the appropriate server type for this lab. So what I've done here, excuse my very bad drawing, is I've started to create a lab with Abstra. And of course, I wanted to throw some JSA in it, so some security, excuse me. Yeah, that's basically what I tried to do here. So I have this master satellite, that's the VQFX, because I said, okay, this is optimized for CPUs. So I'm running the VQFX on that. On the satellite 1, this was RAM optimized. So I run my Abstra on that. Why? Because if I'm using a lot of off-box agents, on-box agents, sorry, then I need a lot of RAM. So that is basically why I wanted to run this Abstra on this box. On the satellite 2, I had the JSA, some VSRX clusters. So that was disk optimized. So I said, okay, there are a ton of disks inside this satellite. So this is my disk satellite. And as you can see, I've also mixed and matched a lot of the servers. I normally use the HP servers because they are the easiest ones for me personally to get. I've seen a lot of Dell or a lot of Fujitsu as well. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Just use what you feel comfortable with. Maybe you have some of them already running at your work environment. So just because I'm using HP, it doesn't mean you have to use HP. So simply use what's best for you. Usually some of these servers will also bring some sort of out of band management, so that you can access a virtual console in case you need to perform some maintenance on it. And like I said, you simply tell your EVE master how the IP of your satellite is, and it will take care of this internal link. As you can see, this is even more structured. So I said, okay, the JATP is on one satellite, the VSRX clusters are on a satellite, and the Abstra is running on a satellite, and the VQFX fabric that I've created, the spine leaf topology, was running on the master. So yeah, you can really play around with it and start to have a look at the different options that your server vendor might bring. Some of them can easily be made more powerful, some of them are not. So always make sure to use everything to your advantage. Like I said, in theory, you could have, I think, even an unlimited amount of satellites, but I would never say that. Usually it's a good idea to not go above 5 satellites, because I mean, if your master is powerful enough, you can totally do that, but please keep in mind that the master needs to run a connection to all of the satellites, and depending on the number of devices that you run, and depending on the load, the master needs to gather some of these statistics from the satellites. So the more you introduce, the more power your master needs to maintain all these connections. So since the master talks to all these satellites for the statistics, if you add too many satellites, your master can become quite slow. So again, look at your server specs. I mean, this is a lab solution, so start to experiment a bit, especially if you're running this for the first time. And then you would simply see, okay, where's my limitation? Can I do this? Can't I do this? And maybe it also makes sense to introduce a second or a third cluster, depending on the amount of services that you want to run on it. But that, again, that depends from vendor to vendor and from device to device. And there are so many options that I literally cannot cover them all. So it's just the advice. Yeah, if you go beyond the 5 server limit, make sure to test it before, and yeah, make sure to don't undersize your master too much. Oh, this looks great. So what we've done is we have talked about the clustering and load sharing, and we have looked at the mixed environments. So now it's time to look at some of the pro features. But Christine, you also wanted to talk a bit about the AATP, so maybe we can do this now. I think it will fit before we go into the pro feature list.
Yeah, sure. I will need to switch screens, Christians. I did want to just share my browser very quickly and just briefly talk about the All-Access-Training-Pass. For those of you that are not familiar with it, let me put the link here on the chat. So as I mentioned in the previous sessions, our All-Access Training Pass is it's a pass that allows you access to all of our training courses that are available for one whole year. So it's definitely a good option if you are seriously considering certification, or if you plan on taking, one or more courses within the learning portal. Then we highly recommend you take advantage of the All Access Training Pass here. So I sent the link on the chat, and I just wanted to show you some things that I might not have mentioned in the past. Here is a breakdown of some of the benefits of it. So it does give you access to all the on-demand courses that we have. So you can see that we do have quite a bit of on-demand courses available depending on the topics that you're interested in. And you can filter based on the topics and the different tracks that we have there. So it's pretty simple. Once you find a course, you just go ahead and enroll, and you can enroll in as many courses as you want and have access to those labs as well. You can also get access to all the instructor-led courses. Those are Juniper instructor-led courses, because I just want to mention that because we do have some partners that teach our courses, so those are not included. These are the ones that are Juniper instructed courses. So you can see these are all online, I believe. But it's for those that need that guidance from an instructor, then we have these options, and your All Access Pass includes any of these courses as well. So we have different regions, different time zones that fits everyone's schedule. I mentioned the access to the labs. For those studying for expert levels, it also gives you access to the self-study bundles. We provide the exam voucher. So this is 100% discount off of your written exam. So this is only for associate, specialist, and professional level exams. And then these two I wanted to mention. We also have a real-time reporting dashboard. For those of you, so this is just an example for Acme Corp, but it shows you the value that you get from the All Access Pass, right? For example, if your whole team has it, it'll have a breakdown here of, how many courses the team has completed, and it actually shows you, the value of the training that you've received. So it's kind of a neat visual. It shows you what are the top courses that your team are taking and so forth, and then what topics in the learning path that they are pursuing. So that's one thing, is the reporting dashboard. And then this is pretty new. It's a knowledge and skills assessment, a sample report. So we also provide this executive summary based on, I'm trying to make it bigger here. Some of the, based on your team's profile, it gives you a summary of very similar to the dashboard earlier, but more of a recommendation. For example, if you have a team here, does this person require training? How many courses do we recommend that person take, and so forth. So we provide this for you. We'll work with you and your teams to provide this sort of recommendation on what tracks to pursue and what courses within those tracks would be appropriate for you or your teams. So I just wanted to, briefly mention those. I've sent for the enterprise, I think there is a training review here. And then here towards the bottom, it's a little hard to find, but I like seeing this because it shows you what are some of the new or updated courses that are recently pushed out to the learning portal. So you can see, so even though you've taken, for example, this Juno's class of service course, maybe you took it 3 or 4 years ago. Well, guess what? It's been updated 100%. It might be a good, course that you want to revisit when you have the time, right? So regardless of whether you have an all-access training pass or not, I like coming to this schedule, this what's new calendar, because it does show you a summary of what are some of the new and updated courses that we have on the learning portal. All right. So that's about it for that. Just a short summary of our all-access training pass. I've sent the link on the chat, but if you do have any questions, feel free to let me know. Anything to add, Christian?
Awesome.
I know you're a big advocate of our all-access training pass.
Yeah, I mean, the all-access pass is just great because, yeah, you can literally take any course that you can think of. And I think in the first year, I almost went to every course because I wanted to, yeah, look at all of them and try all of them out. And then I saw the amount that I would have spent go higher and higher and higher. And at the end of the year, when it was time for the renewal, it was basically a no-brainer for my boss. So I simply showed him here, this is what the all-access pass costs are, and this is what we would have spent. And yeah, there wasn't even a discussion anymore. So yeah, once you have it, it's just a great way, especially if you're going for the higher levels like professional or expert. It's just great to have access to the courses, to the labs in the courses that you can use. You can recreate them in EVE. And get that knowledge that you need on your everyday training and to get certified. So it's a great way to combine that with the labs. So yeah, it's just awesome. Great. I could go on all day, but yeah, let's go back to the EVE.
Sounds good. Thanks, Christian.
Sure. So now we will go into some of the pro features. Some of them I've mentioned them in the last session, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone has seen these features because I think they are just especially if you lab every day, they are just awesome. So the first one, obviously, one of the most brilliant features is the ability to add links, or the hot add link feature. What does that mean? In the community edition, you can create the links between your nodes as long as the devices are powered off. Now, when you're designing the lab, that's not a big issue. That's not a benefit that you get. But imagine running this lab. Imagine running a very, very big lab with a server that needs some time to boot up, or a whole topology that needs some time to boot up. And then you're realizing, oh snap, I forgot one of the links. So with the community edition, you would have to power at least the 2 devices where you need the link down, and then create the link, power them up. And especially if you're using that every day, that is kind of annoying. So the Pro adds a feature called the hot link add. So you don't need to power down the devices anymore. You can simply drag and drop the link, and there it is. It will appear while the devices are running, and you can start immediately labbing without having the need to power them down and rethink your design. That is something that one of the things, if you lab every day, that you don't want to struggle with. Then you have the ability to upload PDF files. And some of you didn't even know that. So I mentioned that also in the last video. Imagine you're running your EVE either at home or in a co-location or wherever. The good thing about EVE is you don't need to install a client on your device. So you can even access it from your work laptop, even if you have no access rights to download something, because you have the HTML5 desktop that comes with EVE. So you can upload your PDF files to your EVE, and while you're labbing, you can access these files in your web browser. I will show you that in a minute. And especially if you're going for the expert and you have access to the self-study bundles, you can upload your self-study bundle to your EVE. And once you start to lab in a certain chapter, you can simply open up the page in your EVE without having to carry that PDF to wherever you've got it. Maybe you have it on your home PC, or I don't know where you store it. But this is basically a thing where you can add everything to your EVE, and from there on, you no longer need the device that you initially installed everything with EVE. So that is a huge benefit in my opinion, and not a lot of people seem to know that. So I will show you that in just a minute, because I think that's really, really cool and handy. The next thing is, I will also show you that live in just a minute, is the ability to play with the link quality. So especially if you're doing interrupt tests, or you simply want to find out how will my VSRX behave if I introduce a certain delay or a packet loss. Some of you might have attended the Next Work 2019 in Vegas. That's where I showed this initially. But I will show you that in just a minute. That's a really, really cool feature to introduce some of these, troubled links, I would call them, and then to see, okay, how does the device interact? How is my protocol behaving now? How long does it take for the device to adjust to the setting, and so on and so on. Imagine playing with SD-WAN and you have a couple of links between your devices, and then you want to introduce some packet loss in order to simulate that your provider is a bit off. That is something that can easily be done with this feature, so I highly recommend trying that out. And of course, the logical maps. And at this point, we will see that on another slide. Shout outs to the best man, Chris Parker, for designing the idea for this topology to make me realize how little I know about OSPF. The logical maps is a feature that allows you to use your custom images, so pictures, don't mix it up with the nodes, upload that to your EVE, and you're no longer dependent on the topology that you see on your screen. Because if you have huge labs, you have a lot of internal links between the VM access and the VQF access. That can get quite messy. So it might make sense to upload a logical map of your topology and then start labbing with this logical map. And now I'm going to jump right into the EVE. So let's have a look. So I've created a very, very simple topology. This is just two VSRXs. Let's open them up. VSRX-A and VSRX-B. No surprise here. Let's go ahead and have them ping each other in order to see the link quality settings. So as you can see, nothing fancy going on here, just a link between two VSRXs. And now we can start to introduce some bad links to the devices. So you simply right click them and you go to edit quality. And as you can see, let's go ahead and do a 5-second delay, for example. So, and now, as you can see, it immediately reflects what I've just said. And now you see, okay, you have a 5-second delay. And like I said, if you're playing, especially with SD-WAN devices, and you want to introduce some more latency or some more packet loss, we can also do that. That is a cool and very, very simple way. Because if you don't have a feature like that, you can, of course, create a VM that introduces some packet loss and do all of that in the Linux itself. I mean, it's possible, but this way it's way, way easier. And especially, again, if you're labbing every day, this is something that you are simply grateful to have. So let's go ahead and set the delay of 0. Let's just wait for the lines to show. Okay, perfect. And let's go ahead and introduce some packet loss. Let's say 50% packet loss. So this is something that will make the link suffer a lot. And as you can see, it's dropping packets like hell. So that is also a cool way to introduce some bad links in your topology, and then to check on the devices. Maybe you're running BGP or OSPF or whatever type of protocol. And that is a cool thing, especially if you're learning about the concepts of the protocol and how it behaves. that is a really, really nice thing to actually see how it reacts, depending on what type of filling you're doing here. So let's go ahead and go back to 0% loss. Okay, so this is something that you can do with just a couple of clicks, and this is something in the Pro edition I mentioned before. So now let's go ahead and use the other cool features that we have. Like I said, if you do a right click and add a picture, you can also add something that we call the logical maps. I have already added one. So once I'm doing this logical maps on the left will appear. So if I'm clicking on that, you can see if I click on topology, okay, this is I've uploaded the certification program framework. But as you can see, you can upload any type of image. So let's go ahead and edit this. And let's say, I will select node 1. Let's say whenever I click on the JNCIE sec here, I want my EVE to connect me to the VSRX 301. And if I am clicking on the JNCIP sec, I want to be connected to the VSRX 302. And the cool part is you can even select nodes outside of the lab. So let's say if I click on the SSEC, you can see that here. It's basically a link that this click follows. So if I have an out-of-band management system or a website that I'm opening, that is something that you can also do. So if you're interacting with your EVE now and click on this part of the topology, you can even connect to external services in your EVE as a frame. So that is something that I really, really like. And if you say, okay, I messed this one up, you simply right-click delete and it's gone. So let's go ahead and save this. And if we now go to the topology, as you can see, my mouse is changing. So if I go to the JNCIE sec, I'm connected to the 301. If I go to the PSEC, I'm connected to the 302. So that is something, especially if you have huge labs that have a lot of nodes, that is something that will make everything, way more readable, because you can simply go to your whiteboard, draw a logical topology, and simply take a photo of it, upload it here, map it with your nodes, and that makes it a lot easier. Because then you don't need to fiddle around anymore with how will I hide my virtual forwarding plane behind my control plane in order to make it look nice. Save yourself the hassle, just use the logical maps feature. So let's go back to the presentation. So like I said, these are just some of the features that, not everybody knows about, but that's a question that I get a lot of the times, especially the PDF one. Oh, we haven't covered the PDF one. Let's go ahead and change that. My bad, sorry. Haven't shown that yet. If I'm going to the lab tasks here on the left, as you can see, I'm going to the task management now. I can start to create a new task. So as you can see, I already have one. I called that certification. Let's call this Cert 02. And if I go to the Cert 02, as you can see, I can also attach a PDF. So let's go ahead and attach this certification path PDF here. Save. So I'm going to my Cert 02 now. As you can see, my PDF is now embedded here, and I can, go through my PDF and maybe, like I said, maybe I have the self-study bundle that I'm now looking at, or I have the some topologies that I got while taking a course, or whatever kind of PDF I can think of. I can simply upload it here. I can also write some tasks. So as you can see, if we edit here, you have an editor. So you can say, okay, at first I want you to configure feature XY. Here's the feature guide and attach it. And if a colleague tries to lab on that, because that is something that you can use for the Pro and for the Learning Center edition, because keep in mind, this is also for students to learn stuff. That is something where you can easily describe the tasks, or maybe even for yourself. Like in the first task, I want to create my underlay. In the second task, I want to create all of my loopbacks. In the third task, I want to create my overlay, and so on and so on and so on. So that's a really, really cool feature that I just wanted to make sure that you know of it. So now let's go back. And like I mentioned last time, today we're going to add a custom template. So imagine you Juniper released something new and it's not already showing up in EVE. What now? So you can basically start to, based on one of the nodes, one of the templates that we already have, we can start to create a new one. So today we are creating the VSRX 4.0, but before I get any emails, when will it come out? The VSRX 4.0 is not a thing. This is just a demo here. So I'm just assuming the VSRX 4.0 already got out. I can't see in the future. I don't know if it will hit at some point. Currently, we're sticking with the VSRX 3.0. This is just, yeah, an example that I'm showing you. So with custom templates, I always say start with care. It will bring you only trouble if you go too low on the resources. Usually, especially if a new device is released, there is a document describing the different flavors that the device can use, especially for virtual devices. And please make sure to not go below the recommendations, because I can't mention this enough. You will see some really, really weird side effects. And then you're not even sure what you're troubleshooting anymore, because you're troubleshooting something that you will never see in a live network. So always make sure to at least give them the minimum that it needs in order to run the lab efficiently. Always follow the doc. Even if it's tempting, like, okay, if I just squeeze out some CPU cores or some hard disk or some RAM, I can add another node. It's not worth the hassle. Unless you're, of course, trying to figure out how far you can push it, then you're already expecting the weird side effects. So if that's what you want to do, go for it. You can start to copy one of the templates that are already in place. That is something that we will do to create a completely new device. You can rename it to anything fancy that you like, and you can, yeah, start fiddling around with it. For the Junos-based devices like Policy Enforcer, JSA, Abstract, JATP, it's usually a good idea to start with the Linux template, because most of this hardware or the software will already run on some sort of Linux, either CentOS or Ubuntu. So of course it makes sense to start with the Linux template. And I found, regardless of the vendor, it's always a good idea to start with the Linux template. And if that's not working, try to fiddle around with the other templates. And creating the template alone is not enough. You also need to modify a YAML file for the custom template, but I will show that in just a minute, how to do that. And this is a slide that I already had in session 2, because it depends what type of server you're running EVE on. If you have an Intel CPU in your server, the templates Intel is the folder that you want to use. If you have an AMD server, the templates AMD folder is the one that you want to use, because in the templates, you're also giving the CPU some CPU flags. And that is why we have an Intel section and an AMD section, because it doesn't make sense to give an AMD CPU some Intel code to run, because, yeah, obviously that will not work. Originally, EVE was just running on Intel, but now we also have the support for AMD. So I think that's extremely good, especially considering that the AMDs are getting more and more performant, or even outperform Intel. The number of cores that they release it's simply insane. So it's great to see that, yeah, EVE adapted for quite some time now, and we can also use AMD servers. But always keep that in mind if you're looking at an example that might be for an Intel server. So if you're recreating this and you have an AMD CPU, make sure to change that. And like I said, we also need this custom templates YAML file. That is basically where you tell it, okay, this is the name of the template that I have created. Then there's also a list name that you can choose. That is the one that will be displayed on the EVE GUI. And basically, this custom template YAML, it looks for the template file in your Intel or AMD folder. It then checks, do you already have an image uploaded? If not, it's visible but grayed out, because you haven't added any images yet. And if you have one that matches the folder, then it will be this bluish. I can show you that here if I'm adding a node. So as you can see, let's pick one. Or this Aruba net edit, for example. I haven't uploaded anything for this Aruba net edit. As you can see, it's grayed out, and I cannot edit because, yeah, I haven't uploaded anything. If I want to add the extra, for example, you can see, okay, this is a light blue. Hope you can see that, and I can edit. And as soon as I click on it, it will start to ask me for the image version, and so on and so on. So that is basically where it checks: has he uploaded anything that I can use with the nodes yet? Or yeah, maybe the folder is empty or there isn't anything uploaded yet. So at this point, let's go ahead and jump to my EVE server. And before we do that, I will show you that I don't have anything funny going on here. So if I type VSRX, you can see I have VSRX. I have created a VSRX 3.0 custom template that you can find on my blog. And there is the VSRX next gen. So as you can see, no VSRX 4.0 is visible here because the template does not yet exist. So let's change that. Let's go to our EVE server. As you can see, I'm in the Unit Lab HTML templates Intel because my server is running on an Intel CPU. And as you can see, these are all the templates that are already in place. So let's go ahead and use this VSRX 3.0 as our base and name it VSRX 4.0.yaml. So let's jump into it. And as you can see, it's called VSRX 3.0. That's the name that you will see once you add a node. Let me show you that. You see VSRX 3.01. That is exactly what we're seeing here. VSRX 3, and then it starts 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So let's go ahead and change that to 4.0. And yeah, let's for example just leave it at that. So we've now changed it to the VSRX 4.0 in the naming, so that we know, okay, it's our new custom template. Well, let's go ahead and use this interface here, so that we can immediately see. I also showed that last time, but that we can immediately see, okay, this is now the custom template that we're using here and not something that I have created before. So let's save it. Let's have a look at the folder. And as you can see, we have the VSRX 4.0. Going back to the EVE, add an object node, VSRX. It's not visible yet. That is because, yeah, we haven't told EVE that we want to make it visible. So the custom template, the YAML file, it has not been adapted to that yet. So let's go back to our EVE. Let's change that. So basically the opt unit lab HTML includes custom templates YAML. That is something, again, I will share the slides later that you can recreate at your own pace. So if we're going to this template here, you can see I added the VSRX 3.0 as a VSRX 3.0 custom template. And now I'm simply copying that. And then we will create the VSRX 4.0. Paste it, yes. VSRX 4.0, and let's call it VSRX 4.0. And we call it future use. So let's go ahead and save that. So if we're now going back to our EVE, add an object node. There it is, VSRX 4.0 future use. But as you can see, it's grayed out because, yeah, obviously there's nothing uploaded yet for a VSRX 4.0 future use. So we've now created our very own custom template. We can tamper with all the values that we have. Maybe if this is an experimental CPU flag that you want to test, or some of the interface scaling that you want to change without affecting your current templates, it's always a good idea to create a custom template for that. So let's go ahead and make this really easy. And then simply copy us a VSRX 3.0 SRX 3.0. What do we have here? The 21.01.11, and let's copy that to, obviously, with all the files in it. And let's name it DBSRX 4.0. And again, make sure that this matches in your template file, because as you have seen, I have just replaced VSRX 3.0 with VSRX 4.0. So that is basically the folder that it's looking in. So we will soon have a VSRX 4.0 with 21R1, which is obviously the VSRX 3.0. And it's easier to just copy it to show you that. So if I'm now going back and adding a note, you can see it's not grayed out anymore. I can use it now. I have the 21R1 in it. Maybe I've created a custom icon, or I've changed the CPU and RAM settings, or the Ethernet ports, or like I said, some of the CPU flags. That's also dependent on the type of CPU that you use. That is something that you can use in order to play with different flavors of your devices without affecting your current labs, because you can use this EVE with, maybe you run it at work, you are sharing this with your colleagues, so you don't want to mess with the templates that everyone is using because it could crash their labs potentially. So make sure to do that with a custom template. And also, like I said, maybe Juniper is releasing something new tomorrow. There is a virtual appliance, great, grab it, and then start with this custom template, and you can edit before it's even coming towards your EVE with an official update. So as you already know, EVE releases the new templates from time to time. You can see that in the change logs. That is really, really cool. But if it's something that has just been released and you want to play with it, you now know how to create your custom templates and how to do that. So let's go back to our slides. As you can see, it's really, really easy to do. So that is also not a rocket science. So we have created a custom template, the VSRX 4.0. So now we want to talk a bit about the huge labs and how to deal with them. Like I said, it always makes sense, especially if you're running a cluster, to switch to different satellites depending on the node, but also there is a feature that is called delay. So what it does is it basically delays the start. So let's say you have 40 or 50 nodes in your lab. It might be a good idea to not start all of them at the same time, because it will most likely overwhelm your server, and then you cannot grab a cup of coffee, but a can of coffee or even a container of coffee, because it will take forever to boot this lab. If it's something that you're doing at the evening in order to lab the next morning, that's perfectly fine, but it might be a good idea to say, okay, once the VSRX or VQFX has started up, the CPU load will drop. So let's say I've measured, it takes it 5 minutes to completely boot up, then you might set a delay of 6 or 7 minutes, give it some time to basically cool down, and then start the next batch of devices. After that, start the next batch of devices. So when you're designing your lab, keep in mind that all the resources need to be handled, and especially the startup phase. It can simply overwhelm your server. And I've seen that so many times that people do very, very large labs and simply start everything at the same time. If you're having a really powerful server, that might even work up to a certain point. But especially if you're using the cluster, because you have maybe a lot of servers, but not that powerful servers. That's why you're creating the cluster in the first place. It might make sense not only to put them on different satellites, but also delay the start a little bit. So maybe 10 devices immediately, 10 devices after 5 minutes, 10 devices after 10 minutes, and so on. But that is something that you can experiment with. Again, it depends on the vendor that you use for your server. It depends on the CPU. It depends on so many factors. It's almost impossible to tell how it will interact with the devices. So just play with it, experiment with it, and especially if you're labbing with that every day, you will get a feeling how powerful your server really is, and yeah, what he can handle and when he simply breaks. It's also always a good idea to look at the top in your Linux, because it's a Ubuntu that EVE is running on. So always make sure, especially if you're starting, look at that from time to time and then simply see, okay, is my server puking right now, or can I throw some more nodes at him, and yeah, find out how far you can push your server. And again, use the logical maps. Like I said, this is the topology that we worked with, that Chris created. And on the right, you see what I draw on my whiteboard. So basically, I redraw everything on the whiteboard. But you can see on the left side, you have the RE and the PFE, and you have all the internal links that you're now seeing. And imagine this lab getting even bigger, like 6, 7, or 8 times bigger. Then it can get quite messy, especially if you don't only have one link between the devices, but maybe multiple links. Like I said, especially in SD-WAN scenarios, that can be possible. That is why you want a logical map or a logical drawing, or multiple logical drawings. Maybe you say, okay, I'm just focusing on a certain part of the lab and draw that on my topology. And for maybe a data center, I'm using a different topology, or you have a different view, like one view from the looks of Abstra on your fabric, one view from your JSA on all the devices, including your Abstra, and so on and so on. Yeah, basically everything you can think of. Just create an image, upload it, and then simply map your nodes, and it will make your life a lot easier. And at this point, I think we can play our final game of Kahoot.
Okay, sounds good, Christian. Let me get this set up here. I'm going to grab the screen again. Let me
go ahead. I think we left here. Yes, exactly. So yeah, I can't say this enough. Like, use the logical maps, because this will really make stuff easier for you. And let's go into our EVE again and show you that. I think I have it right here. Yep. So let's use this lab. And then we go to the lab, and I think it was my OSPF1. Yep, that's it. So as you can see, everything is hidden a bit. I mean, you can simply drag them behind, but imagine a huge topology where you have like Oldest just mentioned one, like 50, 60, 70 nodes, and everything can get quite messy. Maybe, like I said, you have multiple links running between the devices, like on top here with the space. You really want to use this logical maps feature. And like I showed you, if you're editing this, you can decide where your nodes are hidden on. Maybe you have a Windows server, a management machine, and in this case, if you click on the area 0, you want that Windows machine to be accessed. Or maybe you have a cluster running somewhere, and if you click on backbone, you want to be connected to the backup node, or whatever you can think of, or simply use a drawing that you find on the internet and map that accordingly. Basically, again, your imagination is the limit here. So use that to your advantage, and especially if you're using this for labbing every day. This is a feature that I found really interesting, and it really helped me a lot, because you can slim down the amount of input that you see and make it so much more clear what you're doing here. And like I said, if you have a huge lab, you can even just show different parts of the lab and don't even look at the whole topology at once. That could be quite overwhelming if you're starting with a relatively huge lab, but start with a smaller part and then simply grow from there. So I also mentioned that in the last session. It's always a good idea to start small and then grow. Don't try to, even if you have the resources, do the 50, 60, 70 node thing at once. Think about what you're trying to achieve in your lab. Start with a few devices, start to configure them, and then simply grow into the bigger topologies. And also think of, like I mentioned, delays, stuff like that, like satellites, using the cluster features in order to get the load down. And at the end of the day, if you're getting your load down, your service, your EVE will react way faster. And that makes a great labbing experience, because the least thing you want to do is to wait 50 or 60 minutes for your devices to boot up. That can be quite frustrating. Again, if you have a powerful server and you're saying, okay, I've designed this now, it's 1 a.m., I need to go and fetch some sleep, you can start everything at lab the next day, not a problem. But especially if you're powering down your server at the evening, maybe it's in your home lab, noise is a concern, so usually you power it down, and once it comes up, you don't want it to take too long. So think about especially the delay restart if you're doing these bigger labs. Yeah, and with that, we have the Q&A, and we've reached the end of our third session. So I hope you guys enjoyed it so far. I think I have one poll question left that I wanted to ask you, because this was the first time that we're doing this 3-part series instead of one very big session. And what I want to know is, was it better compared to a long session? Is it easier for you to attend smaller chunks and smaller sessions? Especially since I said, okay, part 1 is starting from day 0, part 2 is for the more advanced, and part 3 is for the even more advanced users, so that you don't get the same content each and every time. But yeah, that's something that I wanted to know. And looks like most of you agree with having multiple smaller series. Okay, that's cool.
Great. Thanks so much, Christian. Not just for this session, but for all 3 sessions. And thank you, Oldest, for manning our chat window. We had so many good questions come in over the last 3 sessions. And what I was planning on doing is posting those questions as FAQs in our Elevate community. So everyone will be able to refer to that. So let me paste the link here. Let me share the poll results first so you guys can see the breakdown. But yeah, here's the link to the training and certification community where I will post some of those FAQs. And we also have a few JNCIA sessions coming up for our webcast. So here is our schedule of upcoming webcasts for open learning. So I'm sharing that with you. So this really concludes today's session. We'll hang out for a few more minutes in case there are any questions on the chat. But I did want to thank everyone again for attending, and we hope that you found the information useful, and that can give you the knowledge required to get started with EVE-NG for a variety of Juniper related use cases, right?
Yeah, also from my side, thank you very, very much, Christine, for just being an awesome host, and huge shout outs to Oldest for being here, for helping, for giving us insights into the EVE. So yeah, that's something I really, really, really appreciate. Thank you so much for what you guys do to allow us all to lab. So thank you, thank you,
welcome, guys. Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, you're welcome.
Sure, my pleasure.
Any recommendations for virtual chassis training? Well, it depends what you want. Is just the virtual chassis, then the enterprise routing switching things make sense, because like I said, we don't have a virtual chassis. So that is a feature that you need hardware for, or maybe sit in a course and have access to the labs. That is also a good option.
Any other questions before we go?
how much of switching topics can be performed? I think almost all of them, except the virtual chassis part. That is something that you can't do from the enterprise routing switching track. So yeah, the VQFX can do almost everything, but virtual chassis or VCF, I mean, that's now a dead technology, but maybe you still want to fiddle with it. That is something that we can't do. Basically, with the VQFX, it's based on the QFX 10K. So if you look at what the 10K can do, you know that the VQFX should be able to do the same. I'm saying should because the VQFX is a copied lab device, so there is also no support from the Juniper side. It's just as it is. If it works, great, and if not, you can try to have a look. Okay, is it maybe my topology? Am I doing something wrong? But if it's a bug, then you simply have to wait for the new version and hope it gets fixed because there are no SLAs or something on that. So this is just basically a giveaway from Juniper to experiment with it, and if it works, it works. But if not, then there's no guarantee that everything works. Let's say it like this. Yeah, exactly, Simon. You can, depending on what you do, you can see some odd behavior, and then you're wondering, okay, what am I doing wrong? And then you're doing that on hardware and realize did not do anything wrong. It was simply the VQFX. Also, I'm getting that a lot, that you need to reboot the VQFX in order to make it work, or you need to try different versions in order to see that a couple of things work. So VQFX is sometimes really a mystery. Let's put it this way. But yeah, like you said, it's still a good resource to try out some things and to get a feeling of the Junos itself. So especially if you're starting, I would strongly recommend the VQFX because it just gives you a feeling how the routing and switching world and the Junos works. So
okay, then Christine, it's so we have a little bit of time. Yes, I can show this new feature which is called like shared project, and
awesome.
I will show you how it works. Yeah.
Cool.
That'd be great.
So
I'm glad some of you have hung around for a few more minutes. This is a nice preview.
It's not always the early bird that catches the worm.
No worries. I'll mention this when I send the recording link for those.
Oh, Christine, host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, let me see here. Oh, I am not able to. Actually,
okay.
I'm not able to change your
I've
role.
tried now. I think you should be a co-host now.
Okay, let me try. Yeah, I can, guys. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Just a second. So you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you? Okay. So I'm logged in like all this, like I am administrator, and you saw my lab. Yeah, so which you can see. Let's go back in a running folder, and you can see in a corner I'm all this. You can see my so I'm a project manager. Assume that I am. Okay. Now look at this. What I'm doing. I will find this lab where it is based. So the lab name was GNCA, okay. And it is under Junipers, I think that one lab. And Chris, look at this now. Do not open the lab and click on the edit. And now share it with, here it is. You can share with all users what you have configured, actually, who are joined in your EVE-NG, and you can say, so all this editor will be allowed to participate in this project, or you can set more users as well. So that's it. So and now, so we can do the same session from the same browser. Let me open up a new browser, and I will log in now like all this editor in it. Oops. So probably a password was changed. Now here we are. And let's check a password. simple one. Okay. Sorry for that.
I know that very well. So yeah, it happens to me all the time. Especially if you're playing with a lot of EVE servers.
Exactly. So and now I'm going back. So you remember I shared that lab to all this editor. So we are going now into my lab again. Yeah, but now I'm all this. Now I'm all this. Yeah, like project owner. So we will open up the console and we will see how it goes. So you see, console is open, all right. And now we are going to another browser. And I'm logging now as another user. You remember I shared this project to all this. And now let's go to and look at this. This user is editor, like I'm allowed to create labs, but I'm not an administrator, I'm just a user. And I'm going to share it labs and look at this. Yeah, and see that in a brackets, all this in a brackets. So this lab is shared by all this to you. Yeah. So I'm opening this lab. And in the corner, you will see the symbol like an eye. See that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I join it. Yes. Okay. Yes. So editor is joined to all this lab. That's why this eye appeared in the corner. And now I'm opening the same node. Okay. And say hello. And let's go back and see what happens on all this screen. See that? Replicating everything what you do, everything what you do. So we together, both guys, we are working whatever we do here. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Show interface test and let's go back. See that? Everything replicates on the second screen for the second user. So we are now working on the same project. So you are the project owner. So all this is a project owner, and everything what we do is saving on my profile here. And this guy is your engineer who is helping you to configure everything else.
That makes POCs so much easier.
Yes. So single lab, and you can invite your colleagues, let's say 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so 10 guys is not sufficient to invite, but 2, 3, it will be very, very, very beneficial to do that. Because yes, we recently did such lab, yes, and we worked together, and somebody configured the BGP, somebody configured the security devices. This is awesome, really.
Yeah.
So that's how it works. It is implemented in the version in EVE-NG Professional. It is working. So no need any extra licenses, anything else. Yeah. So that works.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this, for giving us insights. That is a really, really cool feature. And that, again, that makes POCs very, very easy, especially if you have one security guy in the room and one routing switching guy. And
exactly.
You can still see what he does. That's really cool.
So it's just to know, yeah, it's for EVE-NG plans, yeah, so what we are going to do, yeah, it's probably many of you are using that, yeah, and you will be interested. So our plans, so we in the middle of March, we are starting migration to Ubuntu 20. So all of our EVE-NG platforms will be moved to 20, and I hope, yeah, it will be nice, yeah, and the more security and other features will come as well.
Cool. Is there a way to use that collaboration when people are at remote sites? Well, if they're accessing your EVE and you have a way with a VPN, or if you're sharing this with a public IP, then yes, that guy could sit at a remote site because you're both accessing the same EVE server. So one person with professional license can share a lab with a community license. Well, no, because we're not sharing that with a different server. Both of these users were on the same EVE server. So the sharing was done on the same server, Pablo. the oldest and the oldest editor were both users on the same server. And
Yes,
you only have one
server.
pro license on that server. So that
So
was
difference
not
was, yeah, it's because my server, which I presented to you, it has not only administrators, but it's a different roles of the EVE-NG licenses, and I joined it like a corporate user, which was all this editor as a user. Yeah, it's that's why. Yeah, it's I can share my lab to another user, but all of those users are configured actually and holding the same license on the same server, single server or single cluster. It is a cluster actually, yeah.
Also great if the editors could see the selection in the CLI of each other. You mean when you're selecting text that the other can see the selection, Richard, or what do you mean?
Richard,
I'm not sure if that's easily doable.
Editors could see the selection in the CLI of each other.
Yeah, if you are the oldest, if you are the oldest user and you select the text, and the oldest pro would also see that, but then the
you mean there's some target messages? Yeah, so who is doing what? Yeah, it's might be no, it is not possible, actually impossible to do it, because a telnet session is a single telnet session. But I don't know. It's if you know, yes, I can show you one more. It's 1 second. Yeah, so let me share the screen. One more thing. Okay. Yeah, might be you know or not. Look at this on a same screen. Yeah, it is all this administrator here. I think so. Yeah. So look at this, the lab chat. Lab chat, and I join it like an all this connected. Okay, let's type a message. Hi, editors, and let's go back now to the all this editor and open the same chat. Lab chat. And you can see, hi editors, and I'm saying, hi admin. If you are users in the same server, you can chat each other during the labs. Yeah, and you can open up this lab chat on the side. Yeah, and you can see that each other, yes, and you can simply chat again what you are doing. That's another interesting stuff.
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned in the second session. If you're deploying that at work and have a cluster at work, it might make sense to share that with your colleagues, because you have enough resources and you can use these features.
And the cluster actually looks very simple. Yeah, it is a working EVE what you are seeing right now, and I'm showing you cluster management. And I can tell you that this cluster management is built in the frame of the single ESXi system. So 3 VMs are joined to each other. So I have 3 machines. So one is a master, satellite 1, satellite 2, but it is a single server and single ESXi. And just for test purposes, I created such cluster, and you can see how it works. It works perfectly. And I can share across this cluster. Yeah, it's just to free up resources, let's say. Now, you can imagine if the single VM machine is running 1,000 processes, would it be better? Yes, if I'm just at 200 processes, I'm moving to another VM. Of course it is. And that's why I created such cluster. And it is making easier for my very heavy labs, which I made recently. Yeah, I can show you what I did. That was heavy and a crazy lab. Yeah, but it is real customer project actually. Yeah, and you can see that. Yeah, so sorry, it is a Cisco. Yeah, but anyway. Sorry, yeah, but you can see it is very heavy lab. So it is a high availability 5 power devices in the middle, and 2 5 power management centers, which are based actually. One is on the one cluster machine, and second is running on a second. Yeah, if you're going to the nodes, and you can see that I can change. So you can see the FMC is running on a satellite 1 server, yeah, and the FMC is running on a satellite 2. That's how it works. So this is a lab shared across my cluster system.
Awesome.
And it is really working nice and very stable. I ran this lab, it's a week, yeah, so without any issues. Yeah, so you can join and continue, yeah. And you imagine you can join and invite your friends, yeah, so your colleagues, yeah, so who are configuring some particular part, yeah, so some specific part you need, yeah.
Yeah, the clustering really changed things.
Yes.
When the cluster was released, it was just mind-blowing, because I could scale out and run labs that my server would never be able to handle on its own. So that was a game changer.
Yeah.
Cool. Any questions, guys?
No need. Satellite servers, no need the license. So once you are buying even the simplest EVE professional license, which including the 2 administrators, your EVE is cluster ready. You can join satellites as many as you like. So the recommendation from a EVE side is that you are making cluster 4 to 5 servers. I will say, why not more? Because the single point of failure, and it could be a bottleneck, yeah, when you are accessing to the single master server and only single interface when you're opening up this web interface, right? And if you have the 8, let's say 8. Personally, I tested 6 satellites, join it, so altogether I have a master and 5 satellites, and it was working fine. But 8, it started a little bit delay. Yeah, so once you are opening the web interface because of bottleneck, because you can imagine, yeah, it's the single interface must to handle the tunnels to all of your 8 satellites. So the recommendation is to make the cluster from 5, so 4 to 5 servers altogether.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, it looks like one more last question, and then we will need to wrap up. Any tips for running EVE-NG for CI or CD?
I don't think so.
Well, it depends on the type that you use. Of course, you can use it with CI/CD and spin up nodes automatically, use the API. But yeah, the API is something that I'm rarely using, so I don't know that on the top of my head. So
actually, answer would be yes. API is supported, yes, but these guys are configuring these API by themselves. Yeah, it is not a secret. Yes, EVE-NG is running on very huge companies now, like British Telecom, for example, and these guys configure it and develop the modules which are based on API, so integrated together with some booking systems and then whatever it is, and auto spinning up labs and auto loading configurations or wiping labs, what they are doing themselves. So EVE-NG is ready for that, yes, but rest part is in your hands.
Great. All right, I think this is a good time to conclude today's session. Thanks again for attending, everyone, and thank you, Christian and Aldis, for being with us today. And everyone will get a webinar survey once you exit, so please take a few moments to give us your feedback so that we can improve our future sessions. And have a great day, everyone. We hope to see you again in a future webcast.
Thanks, guys.